Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charnley. This is yet another historic church in Leicestershire. This is St Denis, Eaton. St Denis, of course, patron saint of Paris. The French called him Saint Denis, but we're in Leicestershire, so it's Denis. The building here is 12th century in origin, although what we see today is largely 13th and 15th centuries. It's a 13th century church, 15th century clerestory and some extra work. Restored in the 19th century when all the pews were taken out and replaced with chairs. So do not blame the 20th century for that. That's the Victorians. There is an organ here that comes from the Methodist chapel that closed in 2005. So this is now the only place of worship in the village. So let's have a look around. As usual, then, we start at the west end. You can see we have two aisles at about the same date. This is the slightly older one, this is the slightly later one. You can see here that the capitals are moving to a more there's a style that you find later on in the 13th century. That is the organ from the Methodist chapel. It replaced, I suspect, a harmonium in this building, because there is an old photograph over here of the church as it was shortly after the Restoration, and there's no sign of an organ. It's quite a nice instrument, that one. We have here the War Memorial. We have 1919, and there's the dead from the First World War, and then there's just the one name for the Second. And there we have it. The pulpit is not the one shown in the older photograph, which does make me wonder if it comes from the Methodists as well, because it's quite a decent pulpit, and it's bigger than the previous one, and I can't really see, well, it's possible it's put here later, but we have a rood screen. This is a medieval screen, 15th century, been a bit restored, and it would have already been painted, but as in so many cases, particularly around here, the paint has gone. There is some stained glass here. That's St Denis there in the middle, 1975. Back past the pulpit, and here in this aisle we have the font. Nice medieval bowl on this somewhat, I want to be kind, but it is somewhat unsightly plinth. You can see here there's a bit of damage to it, because in the Middle Ages fonts were locked to prevent people pinching the water inside for superstitious purposes. Oops. Here on the screen we have, this is an hourglass holder for the pulpit, and it was used to time the sermon. You're not recommended to turn it over a second time. The chancel, Victorian rails, Victorian altar, no stained glass. Very typically around here there's not a lot of stained glass, because once you get to the period where you might get it put in the Victorian era, the amount of money is less, and it's a case of, well, quite frankly, we've got better things to spend the money on. There's a rather nice little chandelier there. So that is a very simple interior. Just to go back into the nave and look up at the original roof line. You can see there's the original roof line from before the clerestory was put in, and that, of course, is put in the 15th century, as so many were. So that is the very simple interior here, really. It's not a very big building, as you can see. So let's go outside. And so here we are outside at Eaton, and you can see the spire here on the church. The church is at the highest point in the village, which means that the spire just gives that little extra oomph to lift up even this fairly small building. It's in a hilly area, so it's not like it can be seen for miles and miles and miles, but it does make it a bit more of a local landmark. So we'll have a look around the outside and again see what we can see. So here we go. As you can see, the spire's not very tall, but it's an addition. And originally there wouldn't have been one. But it's all just to lift it up a bit more, and that clerestory with its big perpendicular windows. The roof level, the roof line of course is very much a perpendicular style roof line with these relatively low pitch roofs, originally covered in lead. Many of them are now covered in something else that has no scrap value, so people won't nick it. I could say many things complaining about theft of materials off church roofs. Fundamentally what it comes down to is that if you do that kind of thing, you're a selfish so-and-so, and it demonstrates that you have no concern or care for other people whatsoever. So there's the church shed, very important for the gardening, and outside of the north aisle, the church is slap bang, it's pretty much in the middle of the village, but I'd say it's also at the highest point, surrounded by housing. We have here, it's a very nice example of a very late 12th century doorway. The style is known as transitional because it's a transition between the Norman style with its rounded arches and the later pointed styles. That's the old school there, now a house. Education was one of the big things that the church provided, and it provided it relatively cheaply, of course. How good it was depended on the master, and if you had a bad schoolmaster, it was very bad, and if you had a good one, it could be quite good. You should just see on the hill there the old Methodist chapel with its pointy windows. That they closed in 2005. It's now a house, or maybe more than one house, but there have been Methodists here for over 100 years, but sadly, what's the 21st century, the chapel closed. And here we go back to the south side. You can see that lovely big porch, because, as I said, porches are important. Important things happen in porches, like the beginning of your wedding service. At least that they did in the Middle Ages. They don't anymore because, well, how wedding services work has changed. That is the outside here at Eaton. So there we go, St Denis, Eaton, Leicestershire. Eaton is quite a common place name in England because it essentially means Eastern Township, Eastern Settlement, and it just contracts down usually into Eaton. There are some Easterns as well, but here it's Eaton. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.